What's up, everybody? Another edition of Damian G Sports brought to you by Anchor.fm, your one-stop source for podcast needs, as well as to be featured on Big Gold Belt Media at BGB Group on Twitter, BigGoldBeltMedia.com. So, as a follow-up from last week's talking about John Jones with my friend, former MMA moderator, photographer extraordinaire, hot take guru, my boy, Dio. You can find them all on social media. I'm just DEO, back for another edition this week because now we kind of want to talk about what we saw last night to follow off last week, not just with John Jones, but with Darkside of the Ring with Chris Benoit. So we both happened to watch last night's episode featuring ECW original New Jack. That's why the title's called New Jacked, because that whole episode was jacked up.
Yes, it was.
It was something else. So I'm just going to get into it, and I'm going to lead off with, and you can follow suit, Dio.
Mm-hmm.
There is no difference between New Jack and Jerome Young. That is the first thing I noticed last night, beside the scars on his head. And I'm going to actually open up with a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Who has worse forehead scars, New Jack or Dusty?
New Jack.
That's what I was thinking.
Because it's like Dusty's was like it was one area.
Mm-hmm.
New Jack's is the whole shit. Like the whole forehead. His forehead is nothing but scar tissue.
Basically, yeah. It looked like someone just said, "Wee!"
Yeah, like if he
cut his head up.
If he smacks his head like this, it'll bleed. Like that's how bad. Like and it was like, and it's not just like scar tissue. It's bad, like scar tissue. That is like if New Jack were a boxer or a mixed martial artist, kickboxer, whatever, there's a surgery that you can get to remove scar tissue. He would have to get that because he's got so much of it, because a single punch is going to open it up. Like that is wild. I might say New Jack and Abdullah the Butcher are about.
Ooh, that's another good one.
Are in the same thing. Shout out to another Georgia legend. So for all the reasons.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, by the way,
they gotta do a Dark Side of the Ring with Abdullah now. They have
because they did it with Bruiser Brody, and he was in it.
Right. They have to do one with Abdullah the Butcher now because hepatitis and all that. So
does he have hepatitis?
It was he got sued for he infected another wrestler.
Oh man. Like really?
Yeah, like really. And got sued for it.
So let me get beside the scar tissue
with hepatitis C during through sharing a blade, and he sued someone. Yes, and because it happened here, and it happened in Fulton County, which is Atlanta, basically. And like the Canadian courts, they were like, "Yeah, we'll hold that up, $2.3 million in damages because you can't wrestle anymore after that."
$2.3 million in damages.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes. Well, so that's the next thing on. Hopefully, they kind of show that on Dark Side of the Ring. Even though I will say this about Abdullah Butcher, he knows exactly what went down with Bruiser Brody. Don't believe none of that shit he tells you.
Yeah, no, like
he knows.
Pro wrestling is this very, very, very weird community of people. As we've gotten to see this. If you watch the entirety of the Dark Side of the Ring so far, especially the people that came up in the 70s and 80s, they're guano crazy.
Like not guano,
as in batshit crazy.
Yes, that's
yes. So yeah, like they're a different breed of people, right? They want to, when they came up in the kayfabe area, like they wanted everything to be. That's why so many of them like blurred the lines of stuff. So yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot.
So aside from New Jack's forehead, what are one of the first things that pop out to you while watching the documentary?
New Jack's one of the best talkers in pro wrestling history. Argue with your grandmother's gout. I don't care. He never did anything that I would say is like super tragic or anything like that. He didn't commit any wild crimes. Like he stabbed some people up, you know what I'm saying? But like
literally, we'll get to that, but literally he does.
But like it wasn't like any of the other stuff where like killed anyone or beat or like, you know, I mean, I think there is like it was like Terry Runnels and him were together for a while, and there was like allegations of like domestic violence or something like that, I think. But like he never did anything so wild that we know of because everything's allegations. But wouldn't be surprised if he did some stuff like that because he seems like a crazy person. His family history, alleged family history, because we don't know if it's real.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, amazing talker. He understood where he was at and what he needed to do to get over with this group of people.
Well, I mean, they talk about it with Jim Cornette kind of saying, "Hey, go out there and piss off some white people,"
and he knew exactly what to do.
And he did. He dressed the part. He acted the part,
mm-hmm.
and they document that it was going on during the O.J. Simpson, the Rodney King riot. Oh, and we'll talk about that too. Yep. A lot of art imitating life. I think the phrase was being used a lot last night.
Mm-hmm.
And to be quite honest, the first 10 minutes, okay, talking about Smoky Mountain Wrestling, I'm okay with this. His upbringing in the business, the talker mindset, like you were referencing just now.
Mm-hmm.
And then it takes a right turn at Albuquerque when you get into ECW. And like I told people last night, first 10 minutes, cool. You don't think it's going to be anything bad. At like 10:20 in the time elapsed, it just takes a right turn. And wow.
Yeah, man. It did.
They document not just the gangsters in general, and I'll take a half step back and talk about his tag team partner, Mustafa, smoking pencil shavings in his blunt.
Bro. The kind of addict that you have to be to smoke pencil shavings is different. Like, I don't like to use the term crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That motherfucker's crazy.
Yeah.
No two ways about it. Like, graphite is is toxic. The wood, like pencils and any other, like a lot of other processed woods, there's chemicals that are used to treat these things. You don't want to smoke that stuff. It's bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
He smoked so much of it that he was out there fighting the cops, talking about they want to fuck me. I know they want to fuck me. Everybody trying to fuck me. This is a different type of high. I indulge in the THC a lot, especially during quarantine. I have been blitzed out of my mind many a day.
Okay,
but that's some different. That's crackhead shit right there. Like he's special.
Well, I mean, we talked about this off air, how I don't know about smoking pencil shaving. So the minute I brought it up as a topic point, you just started cackling. And what you're saying now is Mofo is crazy. He's out there. Yeah. And if you look at the promos that the Gangsters cut, well, really New Jack cuts, and Mustafa's just kind of there just chilling. He looks like he's got the crazy eyes from fucking Orange is the New Black.
Yeah.
And it's not a gimmick.
It's not a gimmick.
None of them live in a gimmick. None of them. Neither of those two. And shout out to D'Lo Brown showing up, midway through and at the end. And we'll talk about.
I'm happy for D'Lo, man. D'Lo's still around. Seems to be healthy. Go ahead.
So when he talked about I've been in the business for like 30-something years or something like that, and he's like, I'm old.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm old. Yeah. So we fast forward to now the Gangsters are in ECW, and one of the first things they talk about is the mass transit incident. And for those who have not watched it yet, spoilers, and if you've been living under a rock for about 15 years, spoilers on that.
Right.
Mass transit, Eric Koulas, the late Eric Koulas, was, I believe, a backyard wrestler based on what the documentary stated, who was masquerading as a properly trained wrestler.
Right.
Convinced Paulie, because I believe Axel Rotten was at a family function. I couldn't make according to what Sandman had said, or that he couldn't make it, so he filled in.
Mm-hmm.
So he made it seem as if he was 21 years old, when in reality, he was only 17. So according to what New Jack said, and again, you kind of have to take this with a grain of multiple salts, because New Jack may or may not be all there while this interview was happening. So New Jack states, Kulas goes up to him in the back and talks about what kind of stuff he wants to get in during the match. And it's pretty much said that it's the biggest disrespect that a rook can tell a vet before an event. Normally the rooks go to the vet, say, hey, what do you want to do? And then they lay it out. But if Kulas is over here saying, hey, I want to get my shit in,
right,
and I want color, and you've only wrestled, I was going to say the improper term, little people. All you've wrestled is little people, which I didn't remember those guys being on WWE until they showed that clip.
I remember when Jerry Springer, though.
Oh, that I do remember, yes. Yeah. But if that's all you've wrestled and you're getting on an ECW show, like say what you want about ECW being graphic and hardcore, they at least knew how to professional wrestle.
Right.
For the most part.
Right.
Some of them. So New Jack being New Jack, and you learn this throughout the documentary, is that when New Jack turns it on, when he's been slighted, or he just feels like he's been dissed, so sorry for you, bro.
Criminal activity happens.
Criminal activity. And literally, that happened to one Mr. Kulas, who got bloodied open, got the shit kicked out of him, and this is going to be a graphic show, so sorry, mom and dad, if you're going to watch, it's graphic. He got the shit kicked out of him, to the point where his father yells out, he's 17. And then his father was rather problematic backstage, dropping the N-bomb, according to New Jack. Like he was rinsing out his mouth.
But not just New Jack, but also Paul. Paul, he said, did he drop the N-bomb too? Like, he's like, yeah. So this is like, ooh, not so sympathetic now.
Nope.
Not so sympathetic now.
Nope. And to be quite honest, as the show went on, one of the things, and we talked about this off air, was the use of the N-word so cavalierly by people. And I know the South is a different venue back then, and again, get a rise out of them. And like you said before, there wasn't an advent of smartphones, social media, so you could say whatever the fuck you wanted and get away with it. Now it's, if it wasn't for those kids and that dog, they would have caught you if you were coming out your face like that and took you outside. But I digress. So when we got to that part, Dio, when we're talking about the ECW rendition of New Jack, especially the early parts, what are one of the first things that you think about when you think about New Jack and ECW?
There's so many fond memories that are also like, I look back now like, that was fucked up. I don't know why I like that. But like it, back then that tapped into, especially for like us, those of us that were like in our early mid-teens, like that tapped into that sex and violence.
Yes.
Like that all of us wanted, and cranked it up to like 1,000, right? And like New Jack was an enigma because he wasn't a wrestler.
No.
Right? Like there were two people in ECW that I used to love just because like they were so outside of what I was used to. One was New Jack, and two was Al Snow. Because when Al Snow's entrance, like when Breathe came over the speakers and he comes out and fucking crowd's going wild, everybody's got their heads like, and then the song played throughout the whole match sometimes.
Yes.
What? That shit was hype as fuck. I was like, that was my shit. With New Jack though, like New Jack came out with a shopping cart or a trash can filled with whatever household stuff that he could find, right? And then proceeded to whoop your ass. Like
to Natural Born Killers.
To Natural Born Killers, the whole match. The song played on
a loop.
Just that's it. Like that was the greatest damn thing. Period. Like it was an amazing thing because that was so far outside of the box. And I'll say, like, I understand that folks love like lot of the old greats, the Bruiser Brodies and such from like the 80s and such. New Jack is the father of modern day hardcore wrestling.
Ooh, okay.
Because, and I say that because he was the one that took it to that high level. He was the first person that we actually got to see. We didn't get to see Bruiser Brody. Most people that were watching pro wrestling, WCW, WWF in the 90s, especially if you were a kid, you didn't know anything about a Bruiser Brody.
Mm-mm.
What? Like it was what?
Cactus Jack might have been the closest thing we had in the States.
Was the closest thing that we had, right?
Mm-hmm.
New Jack, that was like the first time that we got to see ultra violence in with no apologies. It was just violence for the sake of violence. Yes, WWE had the unprotected chair shots and all of that stuff, but a lot of that had to do with them having to compete with ECW. They had now you have this rival company that has created a niche that has started to leak out into the mainstream. Right. And like you have everybody wants to do this. Right. Now, every match that you go to has a trash can full of weapons,
shopping carts,
all that stuff,
garbage cans.
This is all from his playbook. If it were not for him, and I hate death matches nowadays, to be honest, but like I got to give the man his roses while he's here, even though he's a trash human being.
Agreed, but I will say this: as someone who willingly chose ECW when I was younger, because I had not known what kayfabe was when ECW first really started, getting really big, especially on the East Coast at 2:00 in the morning on Saturday.
Yeah,
when you had OC come on and want to lay you dancing atop the ECW arena for the commercial,
which was a fucking grift.
Which you know what I'm talking about.
Grift.
But that was my choice. WWF at the time, before the NWO, WCW was kind of corny. So that was my choice. So, and you had people like Terry Funk, you had Raven, Sandman, Dreamer.
And like the promos were great because
it was real good.
Yeah, because they took I know folks tend to just look at ECW and just be like, oh yeah, it was just violence. No. ECW was pioneering a lot of things, a lot of amazing things. They were taking scenes from movies and recreating them ad hoc with DIY stuff. Yes. Like, I remember there was a promo between Tommy Dreamer, I want to say it was Tommy Dreamer and Raven, or Tommy Dreamer and Just Incredible. And like, this is from a movie where I forgot what movie it is, but like the guy's in the dark and he lights a match and he has like a little monologue and then he snuffs out the flame. And then like the camera, I guess you would say, would pans it. And then another person lights a match. Like, oh yeah, basically like they were there while this person was there and they didn't even know it. And then they had their monologue as well. And like they did that in ECW. And I remember as a kid, I was just like, that was, to me, was mind blowing because they were telling stories and getting you invested into this ridiculous, hyper-violent nonsense. But they were telling the stories in ways that were far more compelling.
It was well written.
It was very well written. Like Paul Heyman is like, he has a lot of hiccups. Nobody is going to shoot 100%. It's just not possible. But he understands so much about content in a way that just other people do not. So that was ECW. Yeah.
So considering that ECW was the choice of many of the counterculture wrestling fan back then, New Jack matches tended to be shorter in length. I don't really remember the Gangsters getting a long-term run with the ECW Tag Team Championships. That normally circulated with the Dudley Boys, the Eliminators, the BWO. At some point, Raven and Tommy Dreamer had the belts. Sandman had the tag team titles with somebody else too. Whipwreck and McFoley had the tag team titles at some point.
Then Rob Van Dam and Sabu had
it for
the longest. That was Rob Van Dam, Sabu are like that's top 3 my favorite tag teams of all time.
And
Couldn't
again,
bear with the odd couple.
go back and watch. We told y'all last week. Go back and watch. What was it, Hayabusa and the artist formerly known as Hakushi versus RVD and Sabu.
Amazing.
But I digress.
Alfonso on the outside just blowing the whistle for like.
I hated Alfonso.
Bruh, like, so just like how New Jack's music played the whole time, Bill Alfonso would just be outside of the ring blowing the whistle for like 20 minutes straight.
Yep.
It's ridiculous. It's hilarious.
So overall, when we're made to look at this panorama of New Jack's career in ECW, we have the Vic Grimes. We haven't even gotten to Vic Grimes. We touched on Eric Kulas, who later lost his life due to gastric bypass complications.
Right.
But he was maimed in that ring.
Yep.
Maimed.
Absolutely.
Some would say deservedly so.
Yeah. It's because it's on this. It's hard to.
It's a thin line.
It's a thin line because it's hard to not forget that he was the one that pulled the ruse in all of this.
Right.
You know?
Supposedly.
But yeah, rough.
So we watched that, and then if memory serves me correct from what we were watching last night, New Jack is on trial at least twice.
Yeah.
The first time, Paul Lee literally can be said is the reason New Jack did not go to jail the first time after the mass transit incident. Because, like we said before, mass transit's dad decided to drop an M-bomb like he was washing out his mouth with mouthwash.
Yep.
Real easy to come off the lips.
Yep.
And Paul Lee, and if you've ever seen Paul Lee with the baseball cap and the ponytail and look as if he's praying to all the gods in existence when he's exacerbated, I envision Paul Lee sweating through his suit, having to utter the word, well, the N-word in general.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking,
like I saw it in my head. I could hear it in, like, I know I've seen Paulie do this act before on TV. So like I already knew. I was like, oh, I know exactly.
I know what this is.
I've seen this before.
The pain expression, the angst, the slow to bring it out of your mouth. Yeah, I've seen that Paulie look before.
Yep.
And he helped get him off.
Yep.
Acquitted. So Paulie dangerously, for all his warts, like you say, can't bat 1,000, can't hit every free throw. He got New Jack out of jail, essentially, acquitted. And then we go and we talk about just his continued continued violent streak. And this was after kind of the gangsters were kind of ran their course, and it was just New Jack. And then they talk about him snorting coke backstage to get ready for matches,
like on a regular basis,
on a daily, drinking vodka and OJ before going out there. So you know how, like, when we go to the gym, right? And I texted this last night. When we go to the gym, we're taking like a pre-workout supplement. Some people take Bang. Some people take Monster. Some people take Bang. My man New Jack was snorting coke and drinking vodka like he was taking Bang before going to the gym.
Bruh. It's a different animal, bro.
And he's talking about it. And I'm begging y'all, please, if you haven't watched it, go to Vice and watch this. There's moments of insanity mixed with humor, mixed with, oh, that's just sad.
Yeah.
But the fact that he was so forthcoming to say, yeah, motherfucker, I was snorting coke and getting drunk before my match because that's what I had to do. Because they talk about, you take a 10-foot dive into a table.
15.
What do you, 15, 20. It's like when you're playing Donkey Kong, right? And in the arcade, and they shows how many meters up he keeps going.
Right.
My man jumps off balconies often. And then they kind of circumvented it at first, but then they talk about the Vic Grimes thing. And for those that don't, and the Sandman is hilarious, by the way. I want to go back about that mass transit thing. And the Sandman, when he was told about what really happened, according to Jack, about why he went ham on fucking Kulas.
He's like, so that's why.
So that's the reason. And if you know the Sandman, like, he drinks and smokes and smashes his head with a freaking Singapore cane. So it's just hilarious having him go, that's the reason that New Jack lost it. But then he describes Vic Grimes as Humpty Dumpty reincarnated with arms and legs.
I was like, but apparently, like Rick Grimes is like someone to not mess with. Like, apparently, so like in you have the Harley races of the world, you have the Ming or Haku, but apparently, like Rick Grimes is like in that as well because, like, folks are like, yeah, you can't hurt him. Like he's just a tank of a person, right?
Well, he looks like a tank.
A tank, and they're like, yeah, but he's so fast. So if you got in a fight, that's it. Like he's gonna get you first. It's like, oh, I believe it. I believe it.
So for those of you ECW enthusiasts, you know the history between Vic Grimes and New Jack. It's kind of a tit for tat situation where Vic Grimes on a table dive. I believe it was a table dive.
It was a table dive, yeah.
Yes. And he had second thoughts on might have been a balcony dive into a table and having second thoughts. And the way New Jack describes the way he just flings people, like, well, fuck it, we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And him and Grimes go through the table and Grimes twists his body during the fall and he lands on Jack.
Right.
And Jack, instead of Humpty Dumpty having a great fall, New Jack cracked his skull and had a plethora of injuries and had to be hospitalized. And as we stated before at the beginning of the show, if New Jack feels he's been slighted, and you're getting this from the documentary, if he feels as if he's been slighted, he gonna get you back.
Oh yeah, or as he would say, "I'm gonna get you.
I'm gonna get you.
I know how to get you."
and that's exactly once New Jack was healed. They had their blow off to the feud, and it wasn't even for ECW. It was another random promotion.
XPW, yeah.
Was it XPW?
Yeah.
And what wound up happening was scaffold match. New Jack has a taser.
Yeah, like went to the pawn shop and picked up a taser.
Not for show, not to show, not a prop taser, an actual don't tase me, bro. Stun gun.
And tased him so much that he couldn't feel his legs.
Feel his legs. And Grimes is telling him, I can't, and you see it. They show it. And Grimes' legs just turned to jello. And he's telling New Jack, I can't feel my legs. And what does New Jack say?
That don't matter. You ain't gonna need them.
It don't matter. You ain't gonna need them. And they said, wee. As he throws Vic Grimes off the scaffold.
And if you've never seen it before, it is the most insane. Like
he hit one table on the way down.
Right. One table. Because the thing is, with scaffolding matches, you land on the tables. And so pro wrestling stuff, right?
Yes.
A table breaks your fall before you hit the ground.
Yes.
Right. So like it's even though, yes, you see somebody get slammed through a table, that's actually going to be less of an impact than hitting solid concrete because the table is going to give and disperse the energy. This, he was like, I was trying to get him hit the flow, but I didn't throw him hard enough. I was like, oh, he was trying to kill this man. Like, and he just tossed him. And like, the thing is, Vic Grimes, just like, you see this massive human being just kind of sing through the air and then just hit one table. And then his like legs just get hit. They get caught in the rope and it's just like bounce. And like, if you played Skate on the PlayStation 3, the ragdoll physics in that's what this looked like. Like you just see this man sailing through the air and then you just hit this. Like bruh.
And what does New Jack do? He comes down off the scaffold and says, now we're even.
Now we're even. Bro.
So that's just two things that New Jack.
Two
things. We have more to talk about here on Damian G Sports, brought to you by Anchor and Big Gold Bell Media. So as the story progresses, you are now aware that New Jack is not all there.
No, right, yeah.
He is living this moment. You can tell he's living these stories hilariously in retrospect. And for me as a viewer, I find that on one hand concerning as a therapist, on the other hand, refreshing as a viewer.
Yes.
Because it puts you in that first person view of what he was thinking in those moments. And clearly he wasn't, because Coke and vodka.
All the Coke, bro.
All of the Coke. And the little nuances of that is that they show the shadows of him snorting coke
Right. That
backstage.
they like the set design for this stuff has
Yes.
been amazing. Like
Chef's kiss. Yeah.
they have just because they're actually getting people that actually resemble the performers. Like in the Benoit one, it was like they had someone that the same body type as Benoit. Like they've done their due diligence.
Yes.
On this stuff, and they've made sure that they dotted the I's and crossed the T's because excellent work.
It's just hitting those kind of little notes that pay homage to what they're talking about.
Right.
And you're seeing the shadow of New Jack, the actor portraying New Jack, literally look as if they're snorting coke in a seated position. So the Vic Grimes thing, that's 2. So then we fast forward to ECW's over. They talk about how WWF or E at the time is not going to touch him with a 10-foot pole.
Absolutely not.
Because let's be honest here, even before the PG, they weren't touching him. And I want to just preface with the audience, I love New Jack. New Jack is my favorite ECW performer of all time. But no way in hell WWF, WWE, or WCW for their hardcore divisions were going to touch him. Yeah. So he kind of wandered the wilderness of wrestling. And just here's my thing. When you do the circuit now, it's different than back then. When you do the indie circuit, when you wandered the indie wilderness back then, it was kind of, you're getting sent to the gallows on the last leg of your career.
Yeah.
It's not as glamorous as it is right now with all these other promotions popping up and these other independent promotions popping up.
Yeah.
So I believe the next one's the Gypsy Joe, because they ask him, what's the one heinous thing in the ring you did that you kind of regret? And there was a thing where he was, and yes, shout out to Big Old Belt Media in the chat thing. Tyson Dukes was Chris Benoit, and I did remember that and just forgot to mention that. And here's the thing about New Jack and his gimmick. I want to save it to the end, but it's been brought up in the chat, so I'll get to it now. Does it excuse it, or do you understand it better? Now, for me, again, I kind of have 2 hats in the ring here, fan and psychologist. So I'm going to talk to you just as me. His gimmick or lack thereof, I understand where it comes from.
Right.
I understand where the anger and the vitriol comes from. But there's no way in hell I excuse the behavior.
Yeah, if what he said about his childhood is true, meaning that his
dad shot his mom,
stabbed his mom, like violent stuff, which completely that's one of those things, cause and effect, where it's like, oh yeah, it makes sense now, right?
Right.
But not excuse. You can't excuse the stuff. Can't excuse it at all.
And here's how, and I've dealt with clients with trauma for years, how he has gone through that trauma early in the episode where he kind of just glosses over it. Maybe that's how it was edited. Maybe that's just how it played out. But it was glossed over as if it was a Tuesday.
Yeah. And then at the end, like when he was talking about his mom, about like after the, she was like, oh my God, why'd you do that? She's like, bitch, I don't
It's all for show.
Like I was like, this episode was funny, and it shouldn't have been funny in so many different times. It was just like, I'm sitting here laughing hysterically, and I'm like, it's not meant to be funny. It's not meant to be funny, but this is hilarious because he's a hilarious dude. Like, wildly charismatic is an understatement. If you remember watching Beyond the Mat,
yes, way
back in the day, where he went to a talent agency and he read the monologues that they had supplied him with, and they were like, the dude was like, I think he could be Denzel, and she was like, and the other was like, no, I don't think he could be Denzel, but he could be Denzel's sidekick. And like, he had that kind of skill when it came to flipping the switch on and off. Like, it is, it's insane. But yeah,
that's the thing.
He did that old man dirty.
Yeah. So fast forward now to incident number 3, where apparently, and I didn't know this little wrinkle, where he was wrestling Gypsy Joe. I think this is 2005 35, I'm assuming, around thereabouts. Gypsy Joe is 72 years old. Now, his gimmick is that of a tough man. He feels no pain. He's almost independent wrestling's version of Haku.
Yeah.
Feels no pain.
Old Puerto Rican man.
Old Puerto Rican man that feels no pain. Now, from what I heard yesterday, which I did not know this wrinkle, no one told New Jack that was his gimmick.
Right.
To no-sell everything.
Right.
So what winds up happening, you see it very uncomfortably play out on video, is New Jack is hitting this man, and then they're kind of shooting on each other.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe is no-selling everything, as is his gimmick, because he's unbreakable.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking Wolverine style, and we'll talk about the Wolverine claw in a second.
It gets even worse. We'll
get to that. So Gypsy Joe is getting the crap kicked out of him eventually by New Jack, who eventually is like, yo, I'm tired of this dude no selling on my offense.
Yep. So he
and then the crowd
baseball bat, started calling him the N-word.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, oh yeah, I had a baseball bat. I was like, no, he had a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire.
Real barbed wire.
And you saw the first 2 hits. Yep. Boom. Boom. And then because when you have that much barbed wire on stuff, barbed wire is kind of springy. So there was a little bit of cushion to that impact. Yes. And then the shit slipped off. And he just
clocked him.
Just straight up aluminum bat to the head. Pink. I was like, wow, what? Like in the way that he was saying, he was like, I fucked that old man. I was like, this shouldn't be funny. This should not be funny. I shouldn't be laughing at this. I shouldn't be laughing at this at all.
Here we are laughing about a very sad situation where, in wrestling, sometimes it goes too far, and the crowd, and this is how I know New Jack has not processed all his trauma, because all it takes is one crowd member to call him the N-word, and then another one,
gone,
and then another one, and he's completely gone. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention there was another backstage incident with Joe and him, and apparently Joe said something that New Jack was kind of taking a dislike to about, hey kid, listen to me, you'll go somewhere.
Yeah, you'll learn a lot from me. It was like, oh, this is bad. The moment they said that, I was like, this is gonna end bad.
This is mass transit all over again.
This is gonna be worse than mass transit. This is an old man, like at least a 17-year-old. You could, you're gonna get back. You can heal from that better. This is a 70-something. He's like, I beat up 100-year-old man.
Yeah, he said, I beat a 103-year-old man. And to piggyback off what Dio said, not only did he just clock him with a baseball bat multiple times, he buried him under chairs, multiple chairs, and not, I'm gonna place it on you. Oh, I'm gonna throw it on you. I'm gonna slam it on you.
It was just, this was like, this is one of those, it was one of those weird situations, because like on one hand, I understand feeling slighted, and I understand when you have an older person being like, oh yeah, just stay back, you can learn something from me. I'm like, I'm already better than you at this. What are you talking about? Like, I understand where it was coming from there, but like, would I have reacted the way New Jack did? No, good God, no. But like, he is beating the hell out of this small old man, just like it. This is like some, like, and the fact that New Jack was like, I felt bad about it, like
after the fact.
Like I think that's the first time he's shown remorse about any of the shit that he's done.
Right, and that was number 3. That's 3. So as we continue going on in this documentary, and Dio and I are laughing now, but I'm texting him yesterday, and I'm texting my friends yesterday, and I'm saying, what the hell am I watching? Because when we get to the fourth incident, and you're going to have to remind me of the guy's name. I don't recall the guy's name off the top of my head.
It was
something Red.
Jack Red or something Red, something.
Or Joe Red or something.
Joe something.
But it's in another promotion, and I think they try to throw in a little comic relief, because they referenced the promoter of this promotion, who busted out a piano solo in the midst of all this, and talked about how New Jack was one of the most jovial and loving people, and he just wanted to cook and make sure everybody was happy.
I want to taste the spaghetti, bro. I'm sorry.
And they talk about spaghetti being the
first thing that New Jack does, and like
first off,
makes amazing spaghetti.
If you would have put money in the pot and told me that New Jack's preferred dish to make people was spaghetti, I would have said hell effing no.
Yeah.
Spaghetti was his go-to dish to make people happy. So that kind of lightened up the mood a little bit. And then we go into Incident 4, which is again, and I'm thinking if you know wrestling, and yes, New Jack definitely was insane, Avid DC. New Jack was insane, is probably still insane, and I would not want to mess with him in public parameters.
Mm-hmm.
But episode 4, as I'm calling it, this guy and him they had a weird thing backstage where the guy goes up to the promoter and Dio, if you find the guy's name, just let me know what it is.
It's William Jason Lane, but I forgot what his
actual wrestling name was. Yeah. So Lane goes back there with to the promoter and says, "Hey, I want to work a New Jack." Promoter goes, "All right, cool, whatever, man. Like, sure, if that's what you really want, because if you're getting in the ring a New Jack, you know what you're getting yourself into.
Right?
You getting yourself into potentially a Gypsy Joe or Mass Transit incident or Vic Grimes incident if you go up a New Jack. If you play nice with New Jack, he'll do business, and that's that." Apparently,
real quick, there's a promo that he did in ECW, which kind of sets up sets the landscape for the future going forward. And he says, "If you want to work, we can work. If you want to shoot, I'll whoop your ass. I'll beat your ass." And that is from I remember as a kid when I heard that, the conviction in the voice, I knew it was real. This man is a crazy person. If it wasn't for pro wrestling, he'd be in jail for murder.
Oh, without question. Because with episode 4, him wrestling the dude, whatever his name, Lane, in the ring, after they kind of had a disagreement backstage over how the match was going to play out. And here's my thing. If y'all know New Jack is snorting coke and drinking vodka, why are you going to go to him with an attitude?
Right.
Why don't you just play nice and say, "Okay, New Jack, we're going to do the usual spots. Protect me with your shots, please. Do what you need to do. If you don't want me to get any offense in, cool. If you want it to be a shoot, look like a shoot, cool. Especially if you know his reputation."
Right.
But my man decided to, kind of throw a hissy fit, and the promoter goes on record and says he thought it was because the guy had second thoughts about working with New Jack because it was close to showtime.
Right.
And we'll get to that, Avid DC. We'll get to the Terry Reynolds thing briefly after all this. But apparently when they got to the ring, my man decided to shoot on New Jack. Not no sell, shoot.
That's one, and the thing too, people tend to not realize how strong a lot of people are. And because New Jack is he's not a wrestler, but this man is strong as shit. As you can see, this man is taller than him, and he ran up and was you could see these weren't pulled punches. These weren't the practice joints that you see. No, these are full blown. I'm trying to knock you out in a brawl fight, punches. And New Jack underhooks his arm, and you could see him talking to him
"Oh, okay, you're going to do this?
You're going to do this? Cool." Wolverine claw out of the pocket and just start stabbing him. What the fuck?
Stabbing. No. Stabbing. Not like fake wrestling stabbing. Not a blade job.
For real.
Not holding the front of the sledgehammer. For real.
Stabbing this man.
Stab my man up.
And he said, "Oh yeah," they were like, "Oh yeah, he had a Wolverine claw," and I was like, first off, what? And then they were like, "Oh yeah, it was a piece of it that broke off." So I'm thinking maybe a 4, maybe 5-inch. No, the whole fucking blade, the whole claw that he had just wrapped tape around, and you see him fishing in his camouflage pants, takes that out, and you just see stab and eat. The reaction that the man had was immediately, "Oh God." And you can see him just getting stabbed, and then he goes on the ground and just balls up, and it's just we're
not trying to laugh. We're not trying to make light of it.
The ring. He had his what the
9 times.
Like,
I text you, I text my friend, and I said, "Holy shit, New Jack is stabbing a dude in the ring right now."
bruh,
And then they joke about it when New Jack says, "Man, the police said I stabbed him 16 times.
I did
I
not.
counted. It was 9.
Bro.
9."
Bruh, like it's oh my gosh. It is one of the most insane things. But yeah, so he was charged with a couple felonies. One of them included aggravated assault.
He went to jail.
Right. So he was in jail for
3 months.
3 weeks or something. It was a while. But basically, dude that he stabbed shows up to the jail and was like, all right, cool. So I'll drop the charges if we work an angle off these. Basically, I'm hunting you down for what you did with me. He's like, all right, cool. I'll do that for you.
If you drop the charges.
If you drop the charges. So dude went and dropped the charges. 1, stupid. Sorry, you're an idiot. Why would you, what makes you think that New Jack was going to hold up his end of the bargain, sir?
What made you think you were going to pull a angle out of this?
An angle out of this?
What money you think you were going to make about this?
You was out there smoking pencil shavings with Mustafa Saifi. Like this is so. Of course, drops the charges. Now he dropped the charges, so double jeopardy's in play. Can't get charged for the stuff anymore. New Jack went and put all this stuff in storage and fucking left.
And just left.
Just left the state, bro. What?
So right there, those four instances that we documented: the mass transit, the Gypsy Joe, the Vic Grimes, and now this. It is amazing to me that New Jack kept getting work after all this. And I talked about this last week. We brought this up with the John Jones thing. When talent kind of out parlays your behavior, this is one of those things where behavior should never have outweighed talent. Like, I mean, it should have outweighed talent. Talent should never have outweighed behavior in this situation.
Right.
My man stabbed a man 9 times. Went to jail. Got let go because the dude wanted to do a wrestling angle. Got his stuff and left. And to bring up DC's point in the chat, this isn't his only run-in with cutting people, because allegedly when he was dating one Terry Reynolds, and I think Dio, you talked about this, he talked about cutting her.
Right. During, before, and after sex. Like
that was something they did.
Like, I don't want to yuck somebody else's yum. If you're into blood and cut play, cool, that's on you. But like, willing participants, right? There has to be an agreement. But like, if whatever you're into, there has to be an agreement on both parties that they are willing to, take part in these actions. Because you just can't just spring something like that up on somebody. Oh yeah, you know what? I want to cut you. Like, what? You have to have a discussion about that first.
Yes.
But like, this is it's wild. But there were some aspects of this. So like, especially like when it came to like the racism from a lot of the crowds in the South, like, it's as a black man of immigrant descent that grew up in the South. Yeah. All that was real. Like, so specifically the one instance that he talked about, he's like, yeah, at one of the NWA shows, kid walked up to him and like rubbed his forearm and then looked at it. And he was like, what the fuck are you rubbing my arm for? He's like, I'm sorry, but my dad said that if you touch a black person, their skin will rub off on you and you'll start to turn black. Most of y'all think that that's bullshit. No, that's something that happened. That was a belief and a thing that they told people a lot. I was in first grade when I heard it, I had that said to me. So me coming from, I'm like maybe 3 years removed from moving from Bermuda to Georgia. So I went from being in a country where it's predominantly black to being in an area that's predominantly white, a school that was predominantly white. And this was right around, I was first grade. So that was right around when that was like 91, 92. And Terminator 2 had just come out. And, the Terminator toys were like, that's what you had, like, everybody had to have the Terminator toys because they were awesome. So I had the silver Terminator toys, like the T100, right? So I had the silver version, and one of the kids had a kid that was one of my friends that I used to play with on a regular basis, but today was show and tell, so brought toys in. I had my silver T100. He had the gold one. I was like, ooh, it's the gold one. I happened to have other Terminator toys as well. I was like, hey, if you let me play with your one, you can play with the rest of mine too, because it's gold. Who doesn't want a gold T100? The hell? So next thing I know, he says, oh yeah, no, I can't let you play with the toy. I was like, why? He was like, well, my mom said I can't have black people touch the toy. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, because your skin will rub off and make the toys dirty. And I'm just sitting there like, my 6-year-old mind couldn't fathom or understand that.
Couldn't wrap it around, yeah.
Couldn't wrap around it. And like, this is at a time when you go, like I said, coming from a country where you're the majority to being the minority, and then like everything in media, you know, you don't really see black or brown or olive skinned people being the thing. So like I remember I went home and I'm like scrubbing my arm. Like I scrubbed my arm until it was like damn near raw. Because I'm like, I don't want this to come off. And because I asked him, I was like, how is she gonna know? She's like, oh yeah, she said that she would take a magnifying glass and look at the toys to see if there were like black spots on them. And like at the time, I didn't know how to process it. Like I said, went home, scrubbed my skin until it was almost raw, trying to have that come off. And like show and tell got shut down because my mom's a teacher as well. So she went up to the school. I was like, oh yeah, no, this is not going to be a thing that happens again. No more show and tell for the rest of the year. So
you understood it when he talked about it.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, because like I immediately flashed back to it. Like that was an immediate thing. Like I remember, you know, getting called the N-word. There was these kids that moved into the neighborhood, and father had like, you know, big Confederate flag on the back of his truck. Now I didn't know what a swastika was. I had a tattoo of a swastika on his arm. I didn't think anything of it. I was in second grade. Girl was in like fifth grade. And like one day her brother, who was in the same grade as me, had been saying some like foul stuff to me at school. And the thing about me is I very quickly pick up on people's weaknesses and I target them. So it's like, okay, if you want to say things about me, cool. I'm gonna hurt your feelings. I'm gonna hurt your feelings real bad. So I did. He went back to her and she like attacked me once we got off the bus, calling me just N-word, 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 right? And had to do basically everything in my power for my mom to not take a machete up to the front of the apartment complex where they lived and cut the door down. Mm-hmm. So like this stuff was prevalent, right? It is, you still hear it all the time. This is before, for a lot of younger people, that Gen Z, specifically Gen Z that was born after the year 2000,
right?
They don't understand not having a blanket of information and connectivity throughout the world, right? Because back then, you didn't get to see a lot of the stuff that you see on TV now, people being racist and stuff like that. We saw it. We just couldn't prove that it happened, right? Because everybody didn't have a camera at all times. You know, when Rodney King got captured, that was happenstance. Somebody happened to see it happening and had a camera and filmed it. Had it not been for that, people wouldn't have never known about that.
Let me ask you a question. Now that you brought that up, because I was actually using a reverse angle back in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, where the Gangsters and D'Lo Brown and some of their friends jumped the Rock and Roll Express, and Ricky Morton got stomped out, bloodied, telling the crowd, "Help me!" On some reverse, Rodney King. So I gotta be honest. When I watched it, I saw it for what it was for wrestling.
Right.
But when you watched it, did you see it as anything else but a wrestling angle?
I could see it as a wrestling angle, but also as like catharsis for certain people. We actually were talking about this in the group chat earlier. about the Rodney King incident, OJ Simpson, all of that type of stuff. And like, because we were talking about people like gloating about when OJ Simpson
was killing
found
everybody.
not guilty, when he was found not guilty. I remember at the time everybody being happy that everybody that I knew was happy that he was found to be not guilty. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to explain that for people that weren't there. Like because like I said, with Gen Z specifically, because like I think they need to split Gen Z up actually, because Gen Z is 95 to about until now, basically, I think it is. Mm-hmm. And 95 to 99, that's still,
you're not old enough to know.
You're not old enough to know this stuff, right? 2000 Y2K, that was a whole new thing. Information being spread everywhere. And like I remember going to the barbershop, people just being so happy because at the time you just had issue upon issue upon issue upon issue upon issue. You had the young woman that was shot by the Korean store owner in LA was one of the reasons that sparked the riots as well, because the store owner got away with it. Mm-hmm. Rodney King, a whole host of like other things, people just being tired of being stepped on.
Yes.
And then finally seeing OJ Simpson in the same district that Rodney King, that incident happened in, and after seeing those officers skate, after there was video evidence of this, proof of insane amounts of racism, which still exist in the LAPD to this day, right. Insane amounts of racism that was documented. And now like you have it to where it's like, okay, this is it. We can win, right? We can get something out of this. Like it's not just us like when, and so it's tough because I know for a lot of people, it's like, yeah, I believe OJ Simpson did it. Like, I think he should rot away in jail for the rest of his life. But at the time back then, seeing how the adults around me reacted to it, with context, I understand it.
Right. And I think because you and I have context, we can look at the angle itself and see it for what it was when it was happening. Right. Just, a quick aside for me, when OJ was found not guilty, when he was acquitted, they announced it over the loudspeaker in my high school. Mm-hmm. And my entire science class, because I was in biology at that time, we all yelled out hell effing yes.
Yep.
And I was 15 at the time. Yep. So again, now in context, different story, because back then I didn't have as much information as I do now. Mm-hmm. But in relation to the angle where the gangsters got a police escort after stomping out the Rock and Roll Express and making it too real. And thanks for that, Avid, reminding me of that. It just, when art imitates life and life imitates art, and it gets too wrapped up and too swirled together, things get a little too blended where you don't know the line. And I'm going to say at the end now, where we said at the beginning, where there is no difference between Jerome Young and New Jack.
Yeah, there is none.
And I asked Dio off air and I asked him on there, is there a difference? No, there is none. And what worries me down the road is, we just saw the Chris Benoit thing. His brain's got something.
Oh yeah. He's not, he doesn't pass the eye test. Like and when I say eye test, there's multiple eye tests. Like there is the eye test of just looking at somebody like something's off, but also his eyes, like looking into his eyes. That man is not
there.
He's not there in a way that other people are there, right? Like, let me see if I can find, because he posted a picture the night of,
And then at the end of it, they tell him, like they ask him, "Oh, what do you want to be remembered as?" And he talks about if there was a movie made of him, he said he'd want to be snorting coke, sitting in a wheelchair with double middle fingers, barreled up.
Yep.
That tells you enough right there. Where New Jack, the gimmick, and Jerome Young, the person, are one and the same.
Right.
And that is one of the things I'm taking from this. Is aside from the fact that he got away with, attempted murder and assault and got out of jail because of wrestling. Let's be honest. If it wasn't for wrestling, he would be in jail.
Absolutely.
Like we said earlier. And I will take also, and I think with Darkside of the Ring, that's kind of the common thread is without wrestling, these stories would be a lot worse. Or they are worse because of wrestling. And it's left for the viewer to decide.
Right.
Jerome, and again, DC in the chat, Jerome Young, gone through his childhood, it was turbulent, got abused, saw mama get shot, treated it like it's a Tuesday.
Yep.
A lot of us grew up that way. I grew up that way. Mom stabbed my brother in the back in the middle of the dining table. It literally was a Tuesday because the original Flash was on CBS when it was happening back in 1991.
Holy shit.
Yeah, John Wesley Shipp. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Dio.
Yep.
So
they brought him back actually.
I know they brought him back for Crisis. But New Jack, the character, maybe DC's right in the chat. Maybe it helps Jerome Young cope being able to be New Jack. But that's what I'm going to take from it. And before we get out of here, Dio, I want to know while you're looking, do you have any other thoughts on it?
Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, I see it.
Yes. Look at that man's eyes.
That's his screen. Yeah.
Look at that man's eyes.
Like when I saw that, I'm like, well, first off, I say, who's the girl? First off. And second of all, I'm like, oh no. Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah.
He ain't all there.
He's not all there. Like that. This is. It was so much, and it was so much, but it was also one of those things where you had to be there to understand it.
Yes.
And to get the full context of it, right? Because I see this with a lot of younger professional wrestling fans that go back and watch stuff on the network, on the WWE network, right? And they romanticize this stuff, but they don't understand they don't understand the full gravity of some of these situations.
Yep.
It's just one of those things. Unless you were there, you don't understand the full gravity of it. Around the same time, this is around the NWO coming into WCW because they had to compete with ECW and such, right? So you had people like, oh yeah, such and such was trash. It's like, yeah, you got to understand times were different back then.
Yep.
While yes, schools now are very multicultural and you see people of all walks of life in your schools. Now that wasn't the case back in the day. Things are still very segregated amongst lines and such like that. But it's one of those things that made people face, because they explain the situation in ways that other documentaries don't, right? There's a lot of context to a lot of these things that you have to you have to figure out
the context. You have to figure out the context.
Yeah. And just Avid DC, you said that Jerome Young was New Jack helps him deal with life. I honestly don't. I think it's the opposite. Right? This is the Batman situation.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
Batman's the real person. Bruce Wayne is the mask. Jerome's the mask. New Jack is actually who he is.
He's just able to do it legally.
He's just able to do it legally, right? The quote that I told you off air, you cannot hide in the darkness if you don't belong to it. That's him. That's New Jack. you have to have that inside of you. Have to have that type of hatred and vitriol and violence inside you to be able to exact that on people on a regular basis. Because when you exact violence on other people, that changes you.
Yes.
It just does.
It takes something out of you. It does.
It takes something out of you. Like, psychologically speaking, it takes something out of you. We are, while yes, we are violent creatures by nature, to be violent all the time is not natural for us, right? Not in the way that New Jack is.
No, and I think I am going to go forward with New Jack in the back of my mind thinking, I hope he doesn't become Chris Benoit one day.
Right.
I hope he's able to enjoy his retirement. To go to what you were saying before, I think he has a career if he wants to do maybe voiceovers of animated characters and do acting in that realm.
Yep.
He can do that. He doesn't have to beat up a 72-year-old man. He doesn't have to stab someone in the ring. He can live an after the fact life. And that is my biggest hope for New Jack. And that's where I'm going to leave it. So if you have any last.
So the thing is, while with New Jack, I don't fear him doing things in the same way that Benoit will. Right? While yes, he's got crazy CTE. The man cracked the skull. Like, yeah. Like that's gonna do something to you. It's gonna change your brain. But at the same time, I believe he understands the realm that he can do this stuff in. I don't think he is one of those people where it's like, oh yeah, no, I can do whatever I want. No, I think he fully understands that within the squared circle, as they say, he can exact this kind of violence, unleash this inner rage that he has on people.
It's like a coping mechanism.
Right. Yes, the stuff with Terry Reynolds is very troubling, honestly. But like, yeah, I don't know. Something to me, it just seems like, yeah, it's not going to be that it may not end up being like a thing where it's like, oh yeah, he's going to go and murder a bunch of people. But I think that's because he grew into knowing that, right? Had it not been for pro wrestling, yeah, he'd have been in jail. He'd have been in jail. Somebody died.
He is a prime, if not for wrestling or athletics, he'd be in jail. And
yeah, there's a bunch of people in pro wrestling that I believe, people that you wouldn't.
We'll save that for another, because I know the one person you referenced off air. And
there's plenty more. There's a bunch of other people. Like we talked about this on the last episode. You have to be a little off in order to be able to go out and injure yourself for people's enjoyment.
Yeah,
just have to, right? And there's a lot of folks out there where it's just like, ooh, yeah, you're not right. You're not right.
So I think this is a good time for us to kind of transition off of it and just let the audience know, anyone listening on Anchor, or on Big Gold Belt Media, or on my own YouTube channel, Dio and I have decided we're going to go back and watch a lot of the season 1 stuff, and we're going to talk about it on air, because people have said that they find it interesting to get both of our feedbacks. For those who don't know, Dio and I used to do a podcast called Podcast Champs, then a High Mark podcast, and these are the kinds of things that we would talk about. But if people want to hear about our thoughts on Darkside of the Ring, that's what we'll keep doing. You can find Dio at I'm Just DEO on Twitter and on Instagram. His photography at Dio Shoots.
Yep, Dio.shoots, which I desperately need to go on and update, which I should be this week because I did another shoot like 2 weeks ago. So yeah.
Good. Yeah, update that and start charging people for your stuff, dude. You're that good. And I'm not just blowing smoke because I'm your friend. You're that good. Find me on social media, DamianG347. I am a broadcaster. I am a life coach. I am a licensed counselor. I am one-stop shop for everything. Thank you to Anchor.fm, your one-stop shop for podcast needs. Thank you for Big Gold Belt Media. We will be live tomorrow night talking NXT WrestleMania, this a little bit, and the like. And you can find Damian G Sports on YouTube.
Real quick.
Yes.
Actually. So there's this stay-at-home order for the entirety of Florida. That's gonna change wrestling a lot.
For a while, yes.
For a while. So yeah.
So be on the lookout for that. And next time we'll just we'll bring the same format and we'll catch you next time, guys. Have a good one. It was great. Oh, and before I go, we're gonna do Tiger King. Just want to let y'all know that. We're gonna talk about Tiger King. Carol fed her husband.
She definitely
to that damn tiger.
No two ways about it.
No two ways about it. I'll leave you on that.
Yeah, there's a lot. That might be like a 2-hour episode.
That's 2-hour show. Bye.